Yo, what's up? The Thousand Year Door remake was amazing. I love how it has a more pop-up book presentation. I love the new text bubble sounds when characters are speaking, and I think the music just goes above and beyond with the new tracks, especially the new versions of the battle theme, depending on the area you're in. It's everything I want in remakes and then some. It stayed faithful to the original while also expanding it by adding new features and improving on already established ones. If there was one thing I wish they had included, it would have been a boss rush like the Gauntlet in Bowser's Inside Story, or just more things to do in the post-game in general. At the time of writing this, Thousand Year Door is selling and reviewing very well. Hopefully this means a brighter future for the Mario RPG series, and maybe by some miracle we'll get the Partners in Time remake that was skipped over. Mario & Luigi Partners in Time is definitely the middle child of the first three Mario & Luigi games, both literally and figuratively. When talking about video games, the term black sheep is often used as a term to describe a game in a series that sticks out the most among other entries. The reason for a game to be known as a black sheep can vary. Sometimes the gameplay is drastically different from other games in a series, or is a completely different genre entirely, but is still part of the mainline series. It should be noted that games that are considered black sheep aren't necessarily bad, it just means they're different, as is the definition of a black sheep. I think the most recent example of a black sheep game that I played is Final Fantasy XVI. The game makes the biggest departure from the series' turn-based JRPG roots in favor of being an ARPG. The game is still Final Fantasy, it just does Final Fantasy in a different way. I see Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as the black sheep of the trilogy. It has Xenoblade's combat and exploration, but also has the core crystal system, wonky menuing, and the most controversial character designs in the series. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is still a great game despite its major differences from the other games, so is Final Fantasy XVI. So are most black sheep. Sometimes the black sheep are fan favorites. Mario & Luigi Partners in Time is definitely the black sheep of the Mario & Luigi games. Some might argue that Paper Jam is more of a black sheep, which is understandable. It has mixed reviews and is definitely the most divisive among fans, but personally I think it's more alike to the other entries in the Mario & Luigi series than Partners in Time is. When the subject of Mario RPGs comes up, I don't really see this one brought up too often. Partners in Time was the first Mario & Luigi game for the DS family of systems. It came out almost a full year after the release of the DS, but surprisingly doesn't use too many of the DS's features that you would expect from a DS game from around this time. Like the touchscreen is almost completely unused. Partners in Time is one of the first video games I can remember playing. Suffice to say that I've played this game through many times and have some very fond memories with it. So while I do have my biases, I'll be doing my best to put aside my nostalgia with this game and make this review with as much unclouded judgment as possible. The first good thing about this game happens as soon as you boot it up. This title screen is great. I love the music, I love the title coming out of the time hole, and I love how the bros will change poses when they reappear on the screen. Fun fact, the bros who are on the clock hands will change depending on where you are in the game. In the beginning it's just Mario and Luigi, but if you save on the Koopa Cruiser with the babies and check the title screen, it will only be the babies on the clock hands. Afterwards it's the whole quartet. It's such a small thing. The title screen with just the babies only appears if you hit this one specific save block. This is barely an hour or two in, so most people would probably save and then continue on, but they decided to do it anyway, probably just as an Easter egg, but it's still a neat detail. There's a short cutscene that tells us about the Shroobs and why they've decided to invade the Mushroom Kingdom. A Mario game antagonist being aliens who are invading the planet to make it their new home is a really cool idea. The Shroobs all have really fun designs. I like how they're all alien versions of Mario characters. As villains, the game does a really good job of making them feel threatening. This scene of the saucers invading Toad Town is really creepy. The way we see the shadows of the saucers stop over the unsuspecting Toads, and the camera panning up to them opening fire on the town as the sky grows dark is really well done. I'll be talking more about these guys as the video goes on because I really think these guys are some of the best villains in the Mario series as a whole. When we get control of the babies, we're taught that they use the X and Y buttons for their field actions. The decision to introduce Baby Mario and Baby Luigi first is interesting to me. It has a narrative purpose, which is to show the Shroobs attacking the castle, but I believe this was also done to introduce the new button scheme the babies use. In Superstar Saga, Mario and Luigi use A and B as their buttons. They only ever use these two buttons, probably because those were the only two face buttons on the Game Boy Advance, but that's not the point. The point is that the DS has 4 face buttons, brother, and we're using all of them. By introducing the babies first, people who played Superstar Saga first don't have to learn how to jump using the A button again. Now, I say all this, but then later we have to do this stupid obstacle course that is just a complete waste of time, which I'll get to. We get this nice callback to Superstar Saga with this fight against Baby Bowser before we get attacked by the Shroobs. After the Shroobs attack, we're brought to the Mushroom Kingdom of the present, where we learn Princess Peach took a time machine to the past Mushroom Kingdom. We get this little segment where we have to find Toadsworth a refresh room. We can go right to the marked area on the map, but we can actually explore a lot of the castle and get some decent items. The items are in places that are required to go to throughout the game, but it's cool that you can get most of these things literally as soon as you get control of Mario. The time machine returns with the Shroob inside of it, initiating another tutorial fight. Part of me thinks that having both the Baby Bowser fight and this boss fight is a little redundant. On one hand, Baby Bowser being in the castle is important since he calls the Koopa Cruiser to help them escape from the castle invasion, but this also means we have two similar tutorial fights, one right after the other. They're not hard or long by any means, and you can skip the tutorials that Toadsworth tries to give you. The thing is that there isn't a lot to battles at this time, it's just jumping. Then later, we get the same tutorial with Luigi and how he uses the B button. So I guess my overall issue here is that there's too many tutorials that stop you early on. After falling into the time hole, there's this obstacle course segment that I really think is just straight up patronizing. It teaches you that Mario jumps with A and Luigi jumps with B. Again, they really didn't need this. It should be intuitive that to clear ledges and cross gaps you need to press the jump buttons that were introduced earlier. The tutorial is literally just press one jump button after the other and press both jump buttons at the same time. The button prompts for jumping are clear as day in the corner of the screen after they tell you how to do it, so there should be no question about how you jump. If they really needed to explain this, they should have put these things on signs like they do with other things in the game. We're also introduced to the Mario and Luigi specific blocks. These are literally just for show. There's no point in having these in my opinion. If you couldn't already guess for some reason, the red M block can only be hit by Mario and the green L block can only be hit by Luigi. And of course, these blocks get their own tutorial to explain this. There's no puzzles in this game that utilizes these. Like you never see a Luigi block that you can't get because you have Mario with you and you have to figure out how to separate from Mario to get to it or something like that. In Superstar Saga, there were parts of the game where Mario and Luigi would separate, and I think they could have used these Mario and Luigi specific blocks to make some interesting puzzles, but they're just like another block you find out in the world. I guess you could argue that these moving platform segments use them in a way that makes you have to hit the block at a specific time with a specific bro, but you can just stop the platform, so it's not like it's a challenge. There's other tutorials like learning how to heal and how to equip badges, but I think the earlier ones are easily the worst offenders. The only tutorial that I think is actually necessary is some of the last tutorials in Bowser's Castle that explain how to have the babies piggyback on the adults, and how in battles you can do alternate action commands to do more damage if you're fighting as a quartet. Speaking of Bowser's Castle, it has a very clever way of fusing tutorials with the game world. As you explore the castle with the newly formed quartet, you can read these signs from Bowser's minions that explain how to use the babies. It's written by members of Bowser's army telling other members how they should teach baby Bowser how to go through small gaps and reach ledges, but it's obviously telling you how to use baby Mario and baby Luigi as well. It's a clever way to teach the players something without forcibly stopping them from playing, while also injecting it with that Mario RPG brand of humor. Now I know this has been a mostly harsh critique in a video with a title that implies that I'd be blowing smoke up this game's ass, but it's okay, because from here on out, this game really starts to shine. This game has some great visual design. I've always thought that menu design is super important in RPGs. Players spend a lot of time in menus. Whether it's to equip party members or use items, players will be opening menus over and over again, going through different sections to be able to optimize themselves. Players will have to go through them no matter what they look like, but having a stylish menu makes the monotony of menuing that much more inviting. This suitcase design in Partners in Time is genius. It uses the DS's two screens as the upper and lower parts of the suitcase, and has this cool opening animation when you press start. You can see the party's condition at a glance on the top screen, which shows them all as keychains hanging from the zippers of their respective pockets. They even swing a little when you scroll through them. The bottom screen, where you select what you want to do, has a mess of supplies such as extra hats and socks. This is a super fun menu design and I never get tired of seeing it. The battle backgrounds are also very well done. They all capture the area you're in very well. The amount of detail that went into these is incredible. They really give depth to the battlefield. I especially love the Gritzy Caverns background with the light streaming down and the piranha plant carvings wrapping around the columns. The pipes in the Star Shrine have awesome backgrounds as well. The colors are so vibrant and the star pattern warping around the battlefield is mesmerizing. I wish there were more battles in the pipes in this area so I could see the background more often. After leaving Bowser's Castle, we learned that we need to collect pieces of the Cobalt Star, the time machine's power source, in order to save Princess Peach. We stole one from Bowser's Castle, and know that there's another one in Toadwood Forest. Toadwood Forest is the first point in the game where I believe that the map really starts to come into play. The top screen always has a map of the area you're in. Sometimes it will change depending on what you interact with in the area. In Toadwood Forest, we burn down trees that impede our progress and create a bridge that leads into the Vim factory. The art on the maps is great, and they give a good at-a-glance view of how all the rooms in an area connect with each other. They aren't exactly detailed in what's actually in them though, like it doesn't keep track of rooms with locked doors or things like that. There are times where I'll be trying to figure out where I need to go and end up revisiting a room I can't enter yet, since there's no indicator on the map of something barring your path. I don't think it's too bad, but I think this problem could have been easily avoided. One way they could have remedied this is by letting the player write on the map in a similar fashion to the map in Phantom Hourglass. Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, for that matter, have maps that only give the general layout of the area you're in. Being able to physically take notes on the map is genius since you don't have to memorize anything or have to have a piece of paper to take notes on. It's all right there in the game itself. Treasure chests you can't reach yet or symbols you need to remember can be jotted down on the map at any time and can be looked at conveniently. Partners in Time could have used this feature as well, but I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't. Almost all major titles utilize the DS's hardware in almost any way they could. Zelda used touchscreen controls and even the microphone in some cases. Gen 4 of Pokemon had the Pokétch and tons of minigames that utilized the touchscreen. Partners in Time uses the touchscreen exactly one time and then never again. This isn't a bad thing by any means. I'm just a little surprised that you can't use the touchscreen to distribute items or something along those lines. The minigame with the flying saucer maybe could have used it. Instead, it's just hitting blocks at the right time, which isn't that much different from what we've been doing the entire game. The Vim Factory introduces us to the hammer. In battle, hammers are used as a way to hit enemies you can't jump on, and also introduces another way to counterattack enemies. In the field, it's used to clear obstacles and hit buttons, but the other thing it lets us do is drill into the ground to dig up beans. A lot of people hate backtracking, and I can't really blame them. Backtracking, when done well, opens the game world more by expanding on already established areas. Most Pokemon games do backtracking very well in my opinion. Getting Surf opens up some routes to exponential levels. Rivers that could have been written off as decorations for an area become pathways to factories to explore, or caves containing legendary Pokemon to battle and catch. Part of the problem people have with backtracking is how the actual backtracking is done. In Pokemon, you usually have the fly TM at the point you'd actually want to do any backtracking, allowing you to essentially teleport wherever you've been to. In other games, backtracking can be tedious, having to painstakingly walk to your destination for things that may not even be worth the trouble. In Partners in Time, there's barely any backtracking from the point you get the hammer. The only two areas that have beans you can collect are Bowser's Castle and Toadwood Forest. Holly Jolly Village doesn't have any beans, but there's still some other items you can collect. So that's 3 areas to backtrack to. Only 2 if you don't care about Holly Jolly Village. The areas are short and the enemies don't pose much of a threat at this point. It took me maybe 20 to 25 minutes to clean up all 3 of those areas. Getting beans in the areas after the Vim factory are as simple as keeping an eye out for the X marks on the ground and digging them up. I wasn't going for every single bean in the game, there being 167 of them, but I still got enough to get the most expensive badges from Fawful. Yeah, the same Fawful from Superstar Saga. He's in this game selling badges in exchange for beans underneath Peach's castle. His appearance in this game makes Partners in Time a rare example of a game that is both a sequel and a prequel. Digging up all the beans doesn't mean you'll be able to afford all the badges Fawful has. There are 167 beans you can dig up, but it costs 360 beans to get all of Fawful's badges. If you want to get all the badges, you have to do a minigame that shows up later in the game. Is it worth it? Honestly, the only badges worth getting from Fawful in my opinion are the Ulti Free badge, which lets you use Bro's items for free with the Bro it's equipped to, and maybe the Treasure badge if you really want to get rare drops from enemies. So while I don't think getting every badge from Fawful is terribly important, I do think picking a badge to save up for could be a good idea, which might be what they were trying to funnel the player into by having a significantly lower number of beans. Also, now that we've explored a fair number of areas, I think this is a good time to talk about how this game utilizes the fact that there are 2 pairs of Mario Brothers to control and explore the game world with. I talked about how this game doesn't utilize some of the DS's capabilities like other DS games. The thing this game really takes advantage of is the DS's dual screens though. When the babies enter an area that the adults can't, they appear on the top screen. This is often used for puzzles, and I love how you have to use both screens to solve them sometimes. I like this one on Yoshi's Island where you have to change the directions of the pipe blocks with the adults so that the water that baby Mario spits out hits the fire. Inside Yube, there's this bit where the adults launch eggs into the top screen, and the babies have to time a water shot just right so they can break it. Using the 2 screens carries over into the battles as well. The two screens really expand on what was done in Superstar Saga. For one, dodging attacks from enemies is more complex, as attacks can now come from the top screen, meaning you'll have to take your eyes off the bros for a moment in order to avoid getting hit. Taking your eyes off the bros feels like when you take your eyes off your kid for a second, only to turn around and see him getting his ass beat by the other kids. Looking away takes you out of your comfort zone since you don't want these guys getting hit, but you also need to be aware of who's getting targeted and be able to react accordingly. Another aspect of battles are the bro items. Bro items are bro attacks, except instead of using bro points to use them, they're items in your inventory. If you aren't familiar with bro items, you may think there are one or two glaring issues with this. One problem may be that you can run out of bro items. While you can run out, it's not hard to get more. In fact, in this playthrough, I only went to the shop in Peach's Castle to stock up on bro items only when new ones became available. Item blocks also give tons of bro items, and drops from enemies are pretty common as well. I don't think I ever ran out of bro items, and I use them in almost every battle. Money is also crazy easy to get. You'll never have to grind battles to be able to restock bro items. The bro attacks themselves are all pretty creative. The cannon is one of my personal favorites, having to memorize the order of the bros on the top screen before hitting the enemies on the bottom screen. It's also pretty cool that some bro attacks have different versions depending on how many bros are in the battle. The chain chomp might be one of my favorites in this regard. While there's one pair of bros, it'll chase them around the field as they jump on the enemies. With the full quartet, the chain chomp chases the adults around while the babies ride on a wagon attached to its tail, smacking enemies with a hammer. If you hit the wrong button for the babies though, the baby riding the chain chomp will hit it on the head, causing your time with the attack to decrease. There's a whole bunch of variety in these attacks. They're cartoony and fun as well. I'd expect nothing less from a Mario RPG. My only real beef with bro attacks comes from the trampoline and copy flower. There's not a whole lot of difference between these two attacks, except for how one is a vertical attack and the other is horizontal. Most bro attacks can go on indefinitely. Attacks like the copy flower, trampoline, and chain chomp only end when you miss an input. The attacks get faster the longer they go, and at some point it goes so fast that you're more than likely to mess up. I think this speed is meant to act as a kind of kill screen for bro attacks. They don't want you to be able to one-shot bosses, but they also don't want to hold you back. So they made this kind of middle ground where it is playable, but your reaction time has to be godly. Like Tetris's kill screen, it is possible to play through it. This means that it is, in fact, possible to defeat a boss with one bro attack in a single turn. This has been done in tool-assisted speedruns, so it's definitely something that's theoretically possible for a human to do. And look at that! We're at our first real boss of the game. Partners and Times bosses are all unique from each other. No two feel exactly the same. Even the Elder Shrewboid, which seems to be a palette swap of the Junior Shrewboid from the beginning of the game, is completely different from its early game counterpart. Almost every boss uses a special gimmick that makes the battle more engaging. I'll be going over them as we get to them, but right now I want to talk about Swiggler here. Its gimmick is that you have to wait for these shroobs on its sides to pull out poison mushrooms which you can hit into the drink. Once the Swiggler drinks from the poison drink, you'll be able to attack the boss without it counterattacking you. This makes the fight more than just using your strongest attacks and then having to avoid its attacks for 10 turns to achieve victory. You have to actually think about other aspects of the fight besides attacking and dodging. For instance, if you hit a good mushroom into its drink, the Swiggler will heal, but if you let the shroob eat it, it will get more power in its next attack. Sometimes, one shroob will have a poison shroom and the other a good shroom, meaning if you don't want to have the shroob power up, you have to hit the good shroom into the drink before hitting the poison shroom in, potentially risking the Swiggler healing some damage if you're not careful. Having all these avenues for strategy really makes this fight a really strong first boss fight. I know it's technically not the first boss, but it's definitely the first boss where the training wheels have been taken off, and the bros have their full capabilities at their disposal now that we have the hammer. Also, because I don't know when I would ever get the chance to talk about this, the bosses exploding in this game is probably my favorite in the entire series. I love the ripple effect and just how over the top it is. The only thing that would make this cooler would be if the boss had the beams of light pouring out of it before it exploded, like in the later entries. I've been looking for a green screen of this effect for the longest time, but I can't find one anywhere. So if anyone watching this knows where I can find a rip of this, I would be very grateful. I don't even know what I would use it for, I just really want to have it. After beating Swiggler, Baby Bowser steals the pieces of the Cobalt Star from us and it's on to the next area. Before that though, we get a new field skill in the Bro Spin, allowing us to basically fly for a short period of time. Yoshi's Island is a pretty basic area for the most part. You utilize the Bro Spin that was just introduced to solve puzzles, and we're also introduced to this water shooting mechanic. We're also introduced to Yub. Yub is a shroob version of Yoshi, and he's wrecking havoc all over Yoshi's Island. He's eating Yoshis and shit. Mario and Luigi can't stand around and watch that, so they head to the peak of the mountain. Along the way, we have more great examples of the DS using both screens to create interesting puzzles and gameplay. I already went over these water redirecting pipe blocks, but there's also this one where you have to clear the flames for the adults so they can spin across the platforms. It's pretty basic stuff, and honestly I wouldn't call them puzzles, but it's still fun to do. Reaching the top, we finally catch up to Baby Bowser and eat all of his cookies. I love the babies unintentionally causing trouble for the adults. We saw this in the Vim factory where they knocked over Swiggler's drink just because they could, and it's the whole reason we ended up fighting that dude. Now, on Yoshi's Island, we were just about to kick this kid's ass and take back the pieces of the Cobalt Star, but now we gotta get through Kamek, who's taking Bowser's place so he can cool off. Kamek isn't a super interesting fight. She doesn't even have a sick-ass boss explosion when we beat her, so fuck it, moving on. As we beat this child with a hammer for eating our Cobalt Star shards, Yub is juiced up to Goliath proportions and we're all eaten, cueing the next area, Yub's belly. In this area, we find out that Yub was eating Yoshis so that they can be turned into monsters in the factory that's inside its belly. So this is the second time that we're throwing a wrench into one of these Shroob factories, and I wanted to point something out. The Vim factory seems like an important source of power for the Shroob saucers. We killed the Swiggler, so you'd think that'd cause a bit of trouble for the Shroobs, but nothing like that is ever shown. I think it would have been super interesting if part of the plot had to do something with going around sabotaging some key areas for the Shroobs and slowly draining their overwhelming force of power out of their resources before finally taking the fight to Princess Shroob herself. Maybe there could have been saucers defending an area, and by defeating the Swiggler, this causes the saucers to retreat so they can reserve power. Now we have this factory inside Yub that's designed to turn Yoshis into monsters, presumably to fight for the Shroob army. After we save the Yoshis, maybe they could give us information that they learned from their time inside Yub that could point the quartet in the direction of the next key Shroob location for them to fuck with, and in turn the next Cobalt Star Shard. The way it is now, the game just has us going from one area to the next, usually pointed out by the Cobalt Star Shards. There's nothing wrong with this. It lends itself well enough to the twist ending and the characters react and wonder why the shards are doing this, so it's not like they're standing around accepting this stuff at face value. However, I think that this infiltration stuff I was talking about could add some more layers to this adventure instead of just collecting shards to rescue the princess. Like, the Shroobs are a massive army. They're an entire race of people from another planet looking to rule this one. Rescuing the princess won't stop their arsenal of weapons or armada of UFOs, but starting small by messing with their factories and eventually working up to the head honchos is something that can add a feeling of getting stronger throughout the adventure. I'm not saying that this game had to have some crazy plot or underlying message about the horrors of war or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that the story beats could have had a bit more to them. Also, whoa, we're inside Yub, shit. The main gimmick in this area is to collect Yoshi so that they can push rocks out of the way for us. A small detail I love in this area is that if you dig into the ground or hit the buttons with your hammer, you can see Yub reacting to it on the top screen. Like, even though we're being digested, we can still get a little bit of revenge on this guy, just like a little middle finger for eating us. At the end of Yub, we meet Toadbert, who went back into the past with Princess Peach in the time machine. He's lost his memory and can't remember why Princess Peach shattered the Cobalt Star. He gives us a sketch of Peach using the star against Princess Shroob, but it just leaves us with more questions than answers. That's fine, let's fight the next boss. Sunnyside is another great fight. In order to do good damage to him, you have to break these eggs containing Yoshis in them. Once you free enough of them, they'll drop a boulder on his head and knock him on his back. I really like this Yoshi's Island reference when he throws the eggs at you, and I also appreciate him not being defenseless when he's knocked over. I'd actually go far enough to say that the attacks he uses while he's on his back are his scarier moves. At last, we get shat out by Yub, recover the stolen shards from Baby Bowser, and it's back to Peach's castle. After learning the Bro Ball move, we can actually use it to open up an area underneath Peach's castle. This area is kind of optional. You're required to come here after finishing the second to last area, but you can come here whenever you want before that point after learning the Bros Ball. There's nothing really of note down here besides Fawful's shop and a few items. You can visit Toad Town in the past to get a little sneak peek of an upcoming area. It's a little creepy. We're barred from entering the town in the area we get warped to, but you can just barely see the damage that the Shroops have done to the now deserted town. Something else like this is a time hole that opens up around this point that lets us go see Peach's castle in the past. It's completely taken over by the Shroops and we can't enter. There's no music, and the only thing we know about the inside is what we can see on the top screen. It gives the castle a foreboding presence, like we're not supposed to be here. The Shroops are some of the more mysterious villains in the Mario franchise, and this castle only adds on to that. Anyway, we're off to the Gritzy Desert now. The bros try to enter the Coliseum but are immediately chased off by a bunch of Shroops. Kylie Koopa, a reporter who was introduced on Yoshi's Island, tells us that Princess Peach is inside. The area itself is pretty big and revolves around opening a secret entrance to the Coliseum by the way of these statues. The whole idea is that one pair of bros stands at one statue and the other pair stands at the one across from it on the map. I think this might be one of the weaker areas in the game. If you're looking for all the beans in the game, this area will probably take you the longest to search. Its rooms are very big, so doing a few sweeps around each of them is inevitable. Also, I think I'm just over desert levels at this point in my life. I know I said this was one of the first games I ever played, but on replaying this who knows how many times, this area just doesn't really really do it for me anymore. The Coliseum is another story. It has amazing music and this really nice look to it with all the gold and green. It's just a shame that it doesn't last that long. We go through some rooms after watching a cutscene of Princess Shroob feeding Peach to Petey Piranha. Princess Shroob's making a huge show of it too. We are then thrown into a fight with the Shrooboid Brat. For his attacks, he interacts with the crowd. They give him some fire flowers to attack with that you have to memorize the reverse order of to avoid getting hit. Beating him causes the Shroobs to break the floor beneath us and enter the final area of the Gritzy Desert region. The Gritzy Caves aren't the most remarkable area in the game. You just move from room to room. There's some points where you get time to do an obstacle course with the Bros Ball, but even then, it's just a matter of getting into the Bros Ball and holding right. They at least trip you up a little at the end by having the block you're supposed to hit be on a ledge that you have to use the Bros Spin to reach. There's also this minigame where you have to match symbols to progress, but it's, you know, whatever. The enemies here are mostly recolors of the Shy Guys and Boos from Bowser's Castle, but there's also this sarcophagus guy who's really funny. The caves have all these statues of piranha plants carved into the pillars as well as statues of leaves sticking out of the ground. Alongside the light beams coming down from the ceiling, paired with this dank blue coloration, makes this area memorable enough for me on its own. The fight with Petey Piranha is also pretty basic. His attacks are pretty straightforward design-wise. Speaking of designs, I think this boss would have been improved greatly if this was a Shroob-styled enemy. The Swiggler was a Shroob version of a Wiggler, and then we had Yoob who was a Shroob Yoshi, and we even had a Shroob version of a Yoshi egg in Sunnyside. The fact that we're fighting vanilla Petey Piranha instead of a Shroob version seems like a missed opportunity. Maybe it wouldn't work story-wise since all the iconography in the Gritzy Caves seems to imply that the area was a place of worship for piranhas, but I still think it would have been that much cooler if they had gone that route. Maybe they could have had it where the Shroobs found Petey and Shroobified him in order to get him on their side. The bros find Princess Peach with this Shroob facehugger thing on her. After returning Peach to the present, we learn two new techniques. The first one allows the adults to spin into the babies, allowing them to fly, and the other allows the adults to flatten the babies like roadkill, called Baby Spin and Baby Cakes respectively. The Baby Spin can actually net us the most broken badge in the game in my opinion, the Risk badge, if we decide to go back to Gritzy Desert for it. With these two new moves, we now have all the field moves in the game. For one, these moves are super cartoony and they make their place perfectly within this game. The Bros Spin and the Drill are carried over from Superstar Saga. Their application in traversing the areas is great too. In the next area, Thwomp Volcano, we can use our new spin technique not only to get to out of reach areas with items or beans in them, but also to see other parts of the map we can get to. I think that these new moves we just got expand on the quartet nicely as well. Before, it was just the adults and babies that had their own moves, but now we have these new ones that have the quartet working together. Okay, this game is officially really good because Bowser just showed up. He kidnaps Peach, but worst of all, he breaks the bridge, making it so we have to take the long way around if we ever want to get to the other side of the castle from this floor. Ensue a chase to Thwomp Mountain. The beautiful colors and the square shape of the mountain makes this place unique compared to other mountain areas I've seen in games. The fact that this place is also made up of Thwomp blocks covered in overgrowth is also a really nice touch. The enemies here are fun to fight too. These block enemies that can change colors just before they hit you bring a new pacing to battles that keeps the adventure fresh. Same thing goes for these Tanuki Goombas that have a wider arsenal of attacks compared to most of the other enemies that we fought before this point. Climbing the mountain requires us to use all of our field moves. At some points we need to separate the bros so one pair can go further ahead to open up a path for the other. There have been moments like this all over the game, but now that the bros have all their field moves, it emphasizes further how the bros aren't just two pairs of Mario Bros, but two pairs of Mario Bros that all have to work together in different ways to progress their journey. At the top of the volcano, we're chased back down the other side of it by an eruption. It just so happens that Egad's younger self has set up shop on the mountain. We give him an idea that creates a memory for the future Egad, and he creates a machine to put out the eruption. This is the first time in the game where our interactions in one time period has altered something about the other. For a game about time travel, nothing in this game really capitalizes on this outside of the time holes taking us to and from the past. When I think of games that use the idea of time travel really well, I of course instantly think of Chrono Trigger. You see, Chrono Trigger isn't just a memorable game about time travel simply because it has time travel in it. Its time travel is memorable because of how you can do something in one time period to affect the other. My personal favorite example of this is when you can leave Robo in the past to cultivate a forest that ends up withering in the future. Leaving Robo in the past to maintain the area for 1,000 years, the forest ends up flourishing, changing the future. Your decisions and actions have impacts on the world and its characters. This sometimes nets you nice rewards or opens up the way to new side quests. The player has agency over how they want certain stories to play out, which is further emphasized by Chrono Trigger's 13 different endings that can be obtained by the player fulfilling certain criteria before fighting Lavos. Partners in Time could have benefited from some side quests revolving around this idea. It definitely doesn't need 13 endings or 4 different timelines to mess around with, just a few goofy side quests. Maybe a toad gives you a seed from an extinct species of mushrooms that takes a long time to grow, and you can plant it in the past to resurrect it in the present. Maybe this could give you some new healing items in the shop. Little side quests like this can make for great world building. Maybe some of these side quests could have optional bosses or areas, and you could get some of the overpowered badges by those means, instead of just having to backtrack and get them with no effort at all. Some people may see this as a little much for a Mario and Luigi game, but honestly, why not? I'm not saying that the final product is a terrible game or anything, far from it, just that a little more depth could have made this an even more memorable experience. After we stop the eruption, we have to fight this boulder lady, who is super easy, and then it's into the volcano. The inside of the Thwomp volcano follows up the mountain very well. Its red color complements the greenery of the mountain very nicely, and the music being a deeper, eerier version of the mountain's theme is a great indicator that we technically haven't left the previous area, but are inside of it. This also shows the contrast between these two areas. Before we were traveling up the outside of the mountain, now we need to make our way down the inside of the volcano. There's these golden Koopas here that are basically the Amazy Daisies of this game. They have high defense and have a tendency to flee battles, but net you lots of experience and money if you manage to beat them. They also have a rare drop. There's also these shrubs that are on fire. The fact that there are shrubs in almost every area in the past shows just how fast the shrubs were able to spread their influence across the Mushroom Kingdom. This is also a great way to keep the shrubs relevant instead of just having them show up as bosses or for story moments. We have a few minigames we can do. The first minigame is this slot machine that can give us different prizes, but the most notable prize are beans. If you remember what I said before, there are not enough beans to dig up if you want to get all of the badges Fawful has in his shop, so this is the minigame you're going to want to play if you plan on clearing out his stock. I think I would have preferred if there were just enough beans to dig up to buy all of the badges, and then, if you didn't get all of them and didn't want to go running all over the place to find one stray bean, you could come here to top yourself off. This would also work for completionists and casual players at the same time, as completionists would know if they had gotten all the beans if they were able to buy out Fawful, and casual players could just use the minigame to get the badges they had an eye on. The other minigame isn't too crazy, it just has us collecting gems. If you collect all of them, you can net yourself a piece of equipment. At the bottom of the volcano, we have, in my opinion, one of the top candidates for the best fight in the entire game. The two Bowsers have teamed up together, and we end up fighting them as their own adult-baby combo. I love when games do this, where you fight a boss or enemy that's reminiscent of yourself. They might have the same powers as you, giving you a taste of your own medicine, or they may have something similar, not quite the same, but further expands on the capabilities that a character like yours can do. The Bowsers have their own bro attacks. Some are reminiscent of our own, and some are their own original creations. Their shell attack is clearly their own version of our shell attacks, and they have this fireball attack as well. They even utilize the volcano itself as seen in this attack, where they cause blocks to fall from the ceiling. A quick fun fact for you, there's a scrapped bros attack that was the same as the shell attack, but instead of kicking the shell, you would hit it back with your hammer. I like to think that that move wasn't thrown out, but instead implemented as this attack for this boss. Baby Bowser even gets left behind when you defeat the adult Bowser, just like when the adult Mario and Luigi get knocked down. A+ fight. No notes, really good job of making a dark version of the bros, who we've gotten to know the abilities of throughout this journey. After the fight, the Bowsers get sent flying. Adult Bowser falls into a time hole, and Baby Bowser lands on top of the Shroob mothership, which proceeds to suck up Peach and the bros. The inside of the Shroob mothership is fairly straightforward. I really like its otherworldly vibe. Like, what the hell is going on with the Shroobs in the background? Does this imply that Shroobs are manufactured or grown? Why these light bulbs? What about this giant Shroob mushroom with the tubes in it that gets powered on by the key Kylie has? Is it a Shroob? It's shown how the Shroobs pilot their saucers. Is this a giant Shroob piloting the ship? I love how the game doesn't tell us straight up what the deal is with these Shroobs. It adds more mystery to these guys that would probably be ruined if they had laid it out for us. While still cartoony like other Mario characters, the Shroobs are still creepy, and this area really turns that up to another level. It's revealed that the Princess Peach we saved from Gritzy Caves was actually Princess Shroob in disguise. She wanted to scout out the present Mushroom Kingdom, so the real Princess Peach is being held at Shroob Castle. We're shot out of the mothership and end up in the destroyed Toad Town of the past. This area is a great chaser to the mothership. We just saw the inside of the Shroob's most powerful weapon, and now we're in the ruins of an area they destroyed with their firepower. The best part of this area is how we're required to separate the quartet and have them navigate their own sections of Toad Town in order to proceed. We can see areas that are only accessible by the bros that aren't there, which requires a bit of backtracking after the bros are reunited, but the area isn't that big. I also appreciate the game being rewarding to eagle-eyed players who remember parts of the area to go back to. We can fight Shroob robots here and enemies from the next area. The Cobalt Star is also acting strangely and seems to be pointing us in the direction of Star Hill. At the end of this area, we can unlock this door that's been tormenting us ever since we were able to come here through the time hole in the sewers, and also head on to the next area, Star Hill. Star Hill and Star Shrine are the last two areas before we move on to the final stretch of the game. I've been praising the art direction of previous areas, but this one takes the cake. The colors are amazing here. The stars littered around the area and the map screen truly make this place feel like a tranquil calm before the storm we have coming up. It's here we are introduced to the Cobalt Star Sprite who tells us that it was Princess Shroob who shattered it. We continue forward to Star Shrine. The door to the shrine tells us that we can't proceed because Luigi is a pussy, so we gotta do some more stuff. This area revolves around hitting this Aurora block to move forward. In fact, that's what most of this area is, solving puzzles to open ways forward. And although it's not as exciting as Toad Town, I still think it's fun to solve these puzzles instead of just moving from room to room until you get to the boss. The area where you have to connect all the beams of light is a great example of this, as it requires you to do some thinking about what order you have to turn the lights on in order to get them all to connect. We catch up with Toadbert and Kylie and use the touchscreen for the first and only time to clear some dirt off the sketch we got from Toadbert all that time ago, revealing another picture of Princess Shroob. At last, we fight the boss of the area, the Elder Shrooboid. There's a little detail here that I never noticed until now. The junior Shrooboid we fought way back in the beginning was green, and this older one is red, referencing Mario and Luigi themselves. I talked before about how this guy isn't just a simple recolor of the junior Shrooboid. He even has a second phase where he beefs up and summons a time bomb that goes off if you can't beat him fast enough. You can actually buy yourself some time if you hit the saucer with a counterattack. It's fine though, I've been putting all my extra stat increases into attack and stash. After all this, we are able to enter Shroob Castle. Shroob Castle is the last area in the game, and it is a marathon. Our goal is to get to the top of the castle where Peach is being held. Shroob Castle has almost every puzzle in the game that we've seen, as well as some new ones. We also have some new minigames here. First, we commandeer a flying saucer to destroy some Shroobs that won't let us cross the bridge on the second floor. We also have this one in the sewers where we need to shoot lasers at the Chain Chomp who change the directions of the pipes by positioning the two pairs of bros in a line pointing at the pipe it's coming out of. The castle isn't exactly like the castle in the present time. I guess they did some renovations sometime in between. Finishing the courtyard area gets us into the main area of the castle where we have to split up the bros to be able to get access to this block, just like in Gritzy Desert. I think it's neat to have this ledge running throughout the castle that you can see enemies and item blocks on. It drives me nuts when I can see items that I can't reach and have to pass them up for a while until I open a shortcut or unlock a new ability in the RPGs I play, and this is no different. It's not until the near end of the castle that we can use the babies to open up a shortcut and a pathway onto this ledge, allowing us to explore this path. They really put their best into this area, making sure there's multiple places for the player to explore, so that they can feel like they're preparing themselves for the final battle by getting a few items and leveling up a bit. I also really like how the final area of the game is the hub area that we've been in and out of so many times. It gives a sense that you should know the layout of this place, but the Shroobs have corrupted it, making this familiar, safe place seem a bit uncanny. There are things in places where they shouldn't be, and hallways that aren't there in the present. Even the sewers you may have traversed a few times have been altered. Where there was once low-leveled Goombas are now formidable foes waiting to throw the bros out of their own home. Speaking of enemies, we have another dark version of the bros, the aptly named Shroobsworth. Just like with the Bowsers, they have their own bros attacks and they're actually kind of tough to fight, especially when they group up on you. The smaller intern Shroob also stays behind when you beat the older one, meaning you have to go at least 2 turns to deal with these guys. At the top of the castle, we're given a warning by Stuffwell that we're at a sort of soft point of no return. If we save after this room, Stuffwell can transport us back before we saved Peach, just in case we need to do some extra shopping or anything. Now you know shit is gonna go down when the game tells you that you've reached the point of no return. Like it's time to get your shit together. Make sure you use the bathroom before we go, cause we ain't stopping, bitch. We finally find Peach, but before we can set her free, we have to take down the mothership that has opened fire on us. This saucer minigame against the mothership is a nice little send-off. It's the last minigame before we go on to fight the final boss. You need to line yourself up properly before the saucers close in on you and shoot them into the mothership. Beating the mothership causes it to crash into the castle and set Peach free. The gang investigates the downed ship, discovering that Princess Shroob is still alive. This scene where they're all scared to look in the ship is really great. There's no sounds as Mario goes to look into the opening, and Princess Shroob's yelling jump scared me when I was a kid. Princess Shroob isn't messing around anymore. She even interrupts Mario when he tries to talk to Peach. No one ever interrupts Mario. She's pissed, man. Mario's like, fuck you, bitch, you're trying to kill everyone. Let me talk to Peach for a sec. But Princess Shroob isn't having that shit. Mario even turns around super quickly, like he just heard his mom scream at him out of the blue. We then enter a fight against Princess Shroob. She surrounds herself with a force field that she can safely attack from behind. We need to deal a certain number of hits to break the shield and do damage to her. While out of the force field, Princess Shroob can get multiple attacks in on you. This means if you aren't careful and have one or more of the bros go down, you may have to spend the time you could have spent attacking her on getting the bros back up. This makes the fight feel like an actual struggle. After getting her health down low enough, she enters a kind of rage state. This is a really fun and challenging fight. Taking her down causes the Cobalt Star to appear, shocking Princess Peach, who has the last shard. Baby Bowser, who is hiding in the mothership after he landed on it after Thwomp Volcano, steals it and completes the star. It goes haywire and turns the poor bastard into a mushroom. Princess Peach then drops a bomb on us. Princess Shroop has an older sister that she trapped inside the Cobalt Star before shattering it. The Elder Shrew Princess is set free from the confines of the star, and we initiate the final battle. This fight kicked my ass when I was a kid. I was stuck here for so long, and losing to the elder Princess Shroob causes you to go back to fight the younger one. Princess Peach actually helps us out in this fight. We can attack the saucers on the top screen with the star she gives us, lowering the amount of attacks that the elder Shroob Princess can unleash on us. She uses the saucers from the top of the screen to use a variety of attacks and to even heal. This fight doesn't just feel like a battle between you and her, but instead a battle against you, her, and the Shroob army. The Shroobs are pulling out all the stops to make sure the bros don't succeed here. The second phase of this fight makes this one of the best final bosses in Mario RPG history to me. This music is so dramatic and seems so out of place in the Mario universe. The sky changing into this scary backdrop behind the boss makes this fight so memorable, but it's not just the way it looks. This fight is symbolic. The elder Princess Shroob has grown desperate and frustrated. She's not only unleashed her more powerful form in an attempt to kill us, but she's also tributing her own army as ammunition. She shoots down her own ships in a last-ditch effort to stop us. She has 7 different targets on her body. You need to defeat the head to end the boss fight, but to damage the head, you need to take out her crown. This is a decently hard fight, no matter how many times I may have played this game. Her attacks are tough to dodge, even as you destroy body parts to minimize her arsenal. I'd also like to point out that the North American version of this game is the more challenging version. You see, before the game came out in North America, they decided to up the difficulty by giving bosses more health. You can see here that the second phase of this fight has 1,000 more HP than the other versions of this game. This is a final boss done right, especially in games like this one. I love when cartoony games have final bosses that completely contrast with the rest of the game. Gygus is a great example of this. Before you get to him, you are fighting piles of barf and stray dogs. A little bit of him leaks into the rest of the game so it isn't too jarring, like the base underneath Stonehenge and basically everything with the Mani Mani statue. Here in Partners in Time, it's the foreshadowing leading up to the fight. It's done very well. We're let in on the fact that something is wrong, but we can't say for sure. The best bit of foreshadowing comes from when baby Luigi starts crying when we first meet the Star Sprite on Star Hill. A baby crying at the sight of something innocent and friendly is never a good sign. The fact that the shards pointed to each other is another sign. Also, and this is a bit of a stretch I'll admit, you can say that Princess Shroob feeding Peach the Petey Piranha is another sign. The Elder Shroob was royalty, so when it got out that Peach had locked her in the star, everyone was probably pissed off, especially the younger sister, who would take that the most personally. So what do? They capture Peach and have a big show of her execution. But right now, we're executing Elder Princess Shroob. See ya! So let's wrap this up, yeah? We discover that baby tears can cure the people who got turned into mushrooms and also destroy the mushrooms growing around the world. We then go back to the present to find out Bowser landed in the castle after Thwomp Volcano. He ends up eating the mushroom Elder Shroob turned into, and we have this fight against him where we can't attack him except for counterattacks. I don't really think this needed to be here, but you know, it's fine, I guess. I could take it or leave it, honestly. I think really at best, this shows how formidable the Shroobs are. Like, even though you defeated their most fearsome leader, they still have one one last ace up their sleeve, and also gives closure to Bowser's whole thing. This ending scene of the babies saying goodbye to the adults is really heartwarming. I love how the babies give the hammers to the adults, and I think it's really cute that baby Luigi still wants to go on adventures, but Luigi has to set him down. He even gives him the last cookie from Yoshi's Island. We say goodbye to the babies as they return to their own time, and the credits roll. Now that we've finished the game, I want to go over some things that I couldn't find a place for in the main review. The music was composed by none other than Yoko Shimomura of Kingdom Hearts fame, and she really does a great job with the tracks in this game. You can definitely hear some songs that could fit in a game like Kingdom Hearts. I also want to talk about how easy it is to break this game, and by that I mean how easy it is to become overpowered. The Risk badge that I mentioned earlier increases your damage based on how few mushrooms you have. If you have 0, you can do astronomical amounts of damage. Pair this with how the best bros items can go on for as long as you can go, and you can easily defeat any boss in no time at all. This badge is obtainable after getting the baby spin, so it's a fairly early find, but even without that badge, it's still not hard to become overpowered. You can basically min-max the bros as you level up, so you can make sure you haven't gotten too high in power. But I don't think that's good since you would have to know that prior. But it really doesn't matter, as I've had times where I've gotten over 100 in the attack stat from just doing all around builds. That being said, you can avoid using powerful badges and equipment, which are mostly double-edged swords, where you can take a hit in defense for increased attack. So most people might not have this issue, but the point is that it's not hard to accidentally be broken. Second is this game's writing and character portrayal. The Mario RPGs have great portrayals of characters in the Mario universe. The way the bros interact with each other is fun to see. Here are a few of my favorite moments.
Babies. Mario. Babies. Oh yeah. Thank you very much. Luigi. Mamma mia. Oh no.
The fake Italian gibberish that they spout is also really funny. They're technically mute protagonists, but they're able to communicate in really funny ways. These characters have so much personality, and this goes equally for the characters that actually have lines. The two Toadsworths are great together. Even if it is a little repetitive to go meet up with them to get a new move, it's still fun to pop in and see the ridiculous antics they're trying to pull off to please the baby princess. The Bowsers are always golden in these games, and this one is no exception. Even if adult Bowser doesn't get a lot of screen time this time around. The fact that the two Bowsers don't even recognize themselves and end up fighting with each other the first time they meet is hilarious. I don't think there's one character in this game that's badly written. Even Stuffwell, who's the predecessor of Starlo, has some pretty funny dialogue in the way that he makes up his own words to sound smart. Not to repeat myself, but I still think the foreshadowing of Elder Princess Shroob is done very well. Her reveal doesn't come out of the blue, and it makes for a really cool final boss that even plays into the theme of siblings we've seen here and there. I've mentioned here and there why I think the Shroobs are interesting villains, so I'll say this. Antagonists in RPGs don't always have to be deep, thought-provoking characters, especially when we're talking about games like this. The story doesn't have to be some life-changing narrative narrative about slaying a god with complex goals. Games like Earthbound, where the villain's motives are as simple as consuming the world in darkness, are loved for their witty writing, interesting worlds, and interesting mechanics. The Shroobs have a simple goal of wanting to take over the Mushroom Kingdom, but that's not why I think they're great villains. I think they're great villains because of the mystery surrounding them and their ability to fit in with the story by being goofy, while also simultaneously being able to be creepy when they need to be. Great writing doesn't always mean coming up with some mind-bending shit. Sometimes it means making something fun for the whole family to enjoy. I was gonna write a little about the future of the Mario & Luigi series, about how its future is uncertain, but that was before the last direct revealed Brothership. So instead of this bit being about how sad I am that Mario & Luigi may never get another game, I get to talk about how excited I am for its future. Mario & Luigi Brothership looks great. The animations for the bros looks goofy, the style seems to have translated well onto the Switch, and the game has a beautiful presentation. It seems like this game is in good hands despite the fact that Alpha Dream isn't the one working on it. I have full faith, however, that this game is in good hands that may have even worked on this series in the past. I can't wait to be able to finally play it when it comes out, but right now I need to wrap up this review. While Partners in Time might not be the most remembered game in the series, it still holds up really well when stacked up against the other games. If you haven't played this one yet, I highly recommend giving it a shot. The Shroobs deserve to be remembered in all their glory, even if they do reappear in the next game. See ya.